It was 2:17 a.m. when David opened his eyes, not because of sound, not because of a nightmare, but because his body knew something his mind was still trying to deny, a quiet instinct screaming that he was no longer alone, that the darkness in the room had weight now, that it was watching in the way a person watches someone pretending to sleep. The air felt frozen, thick enough to choke on, and when he turned his head toward the clock, the glowing numbers blinked once and died, stuck forever on 2:17. The same time burned into his memory, whether he wanted it there or not. His phone vibrated softly beside him, and even before he touched it, his heart started racing, because some part of him already knew what it would say. Unknown number. One sentence. Which one of the five of you is next? David sat up so fast the room spun, sweat breaking out along his neck despite the cold, his hands shaking his memories he had spent 5 years drowning in alcohol, noise, and excuses suddenly surfaced like a body rising from deep water. He called Daniel without thinking. The phone pressed so hard his ear it hurt, and Daniel answered immediately, breathing fast, whispering like someone hiding from something in the dark. "You got it too," Daniel said, not asking, knowing. "I hear footsteps. Downstairs. In the basement." The word basement hit David like a punch to the chest, dragging him back to that night, to the smell of damp concrete and fear, to Joseph laughing even when they told him to stop, even when Matthew shouted that this was over, even when Andrew begged him to just walk away. Joseph never believed them. He believed he owned them. He believed fear made him untouchable. David remembered the knife feeling heavier than it should have, remembered telling himself he was only trying to scare him, remembered how quiet the room became when Joseph finally stopped laughing. Nobody planned a killing, but nobody stopped it either, and when it was over, they buried the body, then buried the truth, and finally buried their guilt under years of silence. Matthew ran first, vanished into another life, another name, but guilt doesn't stay behind when you leave. It just follows more quietly. Andrew stayed, pretending everything was normal, pretending nightmares were just dreams. Daniel drank himself numb. David tried to forget. It worked until now. 3 days ago, Andrew had returned to the old group chat, typing like a ghost knocking from the inside of a coffin. What you bury doesn't rot. It waits. No one replied. No one needed to. Daniel was dead by morning. His body was found twisted in the basement, his eyes open like he'd seen something that erased every lie he'd ever told himself, and written on the wall above him in thick, dripping blood were the words "one down." The city panicked, but David felt something worse than fear. He felt recognition. Matthew came back after that, hollow-eyed, shaking, saying he couldn't run anymore, saying Joseph had been blackmailing them and it was supposed to end that night, that nobody meant to kill him, that it wasn't fair. Fair didn't matter anymore. Matthew didn't survive his second night home. The neighbors heard screaming that cracked into sobbing, then into wet, choking silence. And when police arrived, Matthew lay on the floor, his tongue gone, his mouth frozen, open like he had tried to confess something at the very end. On the wall above him, 2 down, "The truth hurts." David stopped sleeping entirely after that. Every shadow moved when he wasn't looking at it. Every sound felt deliberate. He was sure Andrew was responsible. Sure grief had finally shattered him. Until David went to Andrew's house and found the door unlocked, the smell of decay rolling out like a warning. Andrew lay inside, stiff, gray, dead for days, and carved carefully into his forehead were the words "not me." David screamed then, because whatever was happening wasn't human anymore, and because deep down a part of him knew this was revenge. It was something worse. That night, the basement door opened on its own. David stood frozen at the top of the stairs as footsteps climbed slowly, one by one, patient, unhurried, like they knew he had nowhere left to run. The voice that rose from below was calm, familiar, and unmistakable. "Joseph." "You all moved on," the voice said softly. "I stayed." The lights flickered. The walls began to bleed, thin red lines running downward like veins tearing open. Joseph stood at the bottom of the stairs, his body ruined, his eyes burning with something that wasn't life but refused to be death. "You buried my body," Joseph said as he stepped closer, "but you kept me alive every night you pretended nothing happened." David collapsed, begging, sobbing, promising to tell the truth, but Joseph only smiled. "I don't need revenge," he said. "I already have you." Morning came with sirens and shouting. Police found David alone in the basement, rocking back and forth, laughing and crying at the same time, whispering apologies to empty air. On the wall behind him, written in steady, careful letters, was a final message. 5 down. The killer was guilt.